I took this medicine, it's supposed to be working. And she put her hand on my leg and she said, you need to thank your lucky stars that medicine didn't work. I just looked at your scans and you have a lot of placenta left behind and you have a lot of blood clots in there. And if that drug would have worked, it probably would have caused another hemorrhage and we don't have your blood. And so I was like, oh, great. Okay.
I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 6 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. I hope your Monday is off to a good start. If anyone can hear 4 of my children right outside the door, they're trying to keep Bowie calm for me so that I can record this intro, and they're making lots and lots of noise. So my apologies. I'm sorry if I sound a little froggy and tired, but I was sick this past week, which was no fun. Thankfully, it did not last long, but it hit me hard, and I think it hit me because I got about an hour and a half sleep the night before or the day before after a day that I only had 3 or 4 hours of sleep, broken into tiny little pieces if you put it all together, says the newborn life. No one else in my family got sick. Everyone else in my family was healthy. Well, except Bowie. That's true. Bowie had his first cold, which he was the earliest or my youngest baby to ever get a cold. But also I feel like the more kids you have, the sooner they get their first sickness because all of their siblings are sticking their fingers in their hands and mouths and all the things. Thankfully, he had one really rough night. That was the night I only slept an hour and a half. Then he seemed to get over it better. He just, it was just the snotty nose and a little tiny, tiny baby cough, which was almost adorable, and sneezing. But I got sick the day after, the next day. I must have had some kind of flu thing. I got fever and nausea. I always get nausea at the beginning of that. And it wasn't a stomach bug. It was definitely a flu bug, but it made me throw up, and it was not great, especially because I'm trying to nurse a baby full time who, by the way, does not like the bottle, won't take it. So it was just a lot of pressure on me to feel well, I can't eat and I'm throwing up, but I have to feed this baby and nobody else can. And that's just always a tough place to be in. I was in a low place, and thankfully that I reached out to friends and family for prayer and support, and my village was amazing. Everyone needs a village. You all need a village. If you don't have one, you need to find one. And if you can't find one, you need to make one. We actually had a whole podcast episode about that, the importance of community, especially in the season of motherhood and early postpartum especially. But my village was amazing. A friend actually paid for another friend to come to my house and give me IV anti-nausea meds and IV banana bag to help me be able to eat again so that I could keep my milk supply up and keep feeding my baby and get through the sickness. So it was so incredible. And between that and just a couple of days of laying low, I really am not back to normal. I'm congested. If you can hear it, I'm still congested and I'm tired, but I think I'm always going to be tired until we're out of the newborn foggy phase. Anyways, enough about our sick week. We are moving on, looking forward to the week ahead. I did want to mention one new thing. We do our podcast through Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is the software that we used to produce the podcast, to get it to all the different platforms so you guys can listen to it. It's our home base, and Buzzsprout actually has a new feature, a couple new features, but has a new feature that you can text us straight from any episode show notes. So I know my Instagram's on there for Surrendered Birth Services, and my email. You can always email me, or you can send me a message on Instagram. But if you're wanting to talk about something just specifically related to the podcast, you can just send me a text. It says on the episode show notes, if you scroll down right underneath the episode description, it says send me a text. And if you just click on it, it'll send a text straight to me. And then when I message you back, it'll come straight to your phone. So that's pretty cool. So if you have a question about a specific episode, or if I didn't mention something or forgot something, or you're wondering something, or I don't know, I'm not sure what you want to send me a text about, but it's a cool new feature that's there. So we're going to leave it there for now and see if anyone takes advantage of it, because I'm pretty sure it's free, or maybe it's in a trial run or something. But if we feel like it's useful, we'll keep it. I wanted to mention that because that was just kind of a cool, fun new thing. All right. This has been long enough of an intro, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into this week's episode, and we are back with lots more new birth stories for y'all to hear. When you have a 56-hour labor that results in a transfer from home to hospital, you would assume all of the trauma from your birth experience is wrapped up in that, right? Not for Nikki. Her trauma came about during early postpartum, with everything from an IGT diagnosis to an aspirating baby to an undiagnosed retained placenta that led to a hemorrhage at 3.5 weeks postpartum. After all of that, it would take some time and healing before attempting to birth again. And then when she was ready, her and her husband faced secondary infertility. Trying to trust God through the process was difficult, but he showed himself faithful in his timing again and again. For Nikki's second birth, she had what some others would describe as a traumatic experience, but instead for her, the supernatural peace of the Holy Spirit made it a beautiful, calm, and cherished memory for Nikki. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Nikki with me today. Nikki, can you just take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us about you and your family, and help us get to know you?
Yeah, I'm Nikki Elwood. I am 35, just turned 35 years old. I have two girls, and I am happily married. My husband's name is Zach. I'm from upstate New York. He's from North Carolina. We live in Charlotte, North Carolina now. We love the Lord. We love each other. That's it.
And that's pretty much it. Well, great. Let's dive into your stories then. So, how old is your oldest daughter?
She's 4.
So take us back some 4.5, 5 years ago to what it was like getting pregnant.
Yeah, so I always tell people I feel like we sneezed and got pregnant with Charlie. So her name actually has been in my heart since I was a little girl. My papa passed away when I was young, and I always said if I ever had a girl, I would name her Charlie after him. I always thought it was cool that when girls had like boy names and they got to be like tomboyish, and so Charlie has been my heart's desire forever, and I was so blessed that God just gave her to me right out the gate. Like it was really cool to find out that she was a girl. Her middle name is Rhodes after my husband's grandpa that passed away, so she's named after both of her great grandpas. But it was no effort whatsoever. We actually went on a baby making trip, quote unquote. We took a camper van through Colorado and spent like 10 days just really enjoying that last little bit of marriage before we, added a little one. And in my mind, it was like, okay, we're going to get pregnant. And that's just kind of how it happened. Like it was not on that trip, but it was right after that trip that we ended up conceiving, and there was no effort at all. So we were very excited to find out we were pregnant with her. Easy peasy pregnancy. Everything went textbook. I ended up initially wanting to do a birth center birth with her. I'm kind of a buck the system person in general. So I knew I didn't really want to be in the hospital, and we don't really go to the doctors for much, but I knew that didn't feel right to me. But I also had this weird fear of dying at home. And home felt like if something were going to happen and go sideways, would my husband be able to come back to the place where things went sideways. And I talked to a home birth midwife actually, and she was like, Nikki, you're not going to die at home. You're not going to die, period, but you're definitely not going to be at home. Like, if something's happening, you're going to get to the hospital and, you'll be in an ambulance, you'll be in the hospital, whatever. She said, so like, I want you to really spend some time praying about that. And she was a believer. And she was like, I don't know, like, go visit some birth centers, but like, I don't want you to rule out home birth entirely if that's the only reason that you don't want to be at home.
Right.
And it really was. I lost my parents in a traumatic way. And so I think that there's just this overarching, like, be aware of trauma in my life. And so we went and visited Natural Beginnings in Statesville. And we walked in and we did not, it was during COVID time. And it wasn't the most like warm greeted, comfy, cozy, what we had hoped that we would experience there. It really felt clinical like a hospital would. And so we were like, okay, the rooms are pretty and that's about what we got. It's different.
Yeah, during COVID, they were definitely a lot more medical and restricted than before that, for sure.
Yeah. So we were like, okay, well, let's go down the home birth path then, and we just out the gate decided that that's what we were going to do. And so there was actually a midwife that I had my eyes set on, and she had told me that she was going to be on vacation and that she wasn't taking births that month. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to figure out, where I'm going or whatever. And then she actually reached out to me and she said, hey, I don't know why, but I feel like I can take your birth. And I was like, okay. And so we ended up interviewing her and two others. So it was kind of between her and another. And she just felt like soft and easy and comforting, whereas the other one sort of felt she was just definitely more cut and dry, more like, I'm gonna tell it to you like it is. You might not want to snuggle up with me kind of
Yeah.
person. um and so I just felt naturally drawn to that softer midwife. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And I loved the ease of prenatal care. Like, it was sweet and like you were just I don't know, it just all felt really easy and no stress whatsoever.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
So then you had home birth midwifery care for your entire pregnancy then?
Yep.
Wow. Well, that's great, especially as a first time mom, not having to like have this horrible OB experience first.
Yeah.
And then that's what leads you to the home birth route.
Yeah.
I love that for you that you got to do that the first time. Okay, so take us to the end of pregnancy then. Take us to, did anything happen before labor started, or did labor just all start on its own?
So I was due June 22nd and actually went into labor on my due date, which never happens. And so it was the middle of the night. I got up to go to the bathroom that you do a million times at that point. And I was like, like, there's wetness here. And I'm pretty sure I did not pee myself. But it was one of those moments like, you've never done this before. Usually water doesn't break ahead of time. So like, I don't know what this is. And so I text my midwife and she was like, okay, well, go back to bed. Like, let's put a pad in. Let's see what this looks like in the morning. But like, try to get some sleep. And so I did. And there was pink on the pad in the morning. And so I was like, okay, pretty sure that this is amniotic fluid. And she's like, okay, well, go about your day as normal. Like, pretend that you did not see that because you were a long way out. But like, first time mom, you have no clue. And so you're like, go about your day as normal. What? How do you even do that? I'm so excited. So I sent Zach to work and I just did. I mean, we went to breakfast and I walked and like hung out. My friend that I was at breakfast with was like, okay, are we timing these contractions yet? Because I'm pretty sure you should go home. She's like, I can
Oh,
see
so
them.
you were having contractions then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So all day that day I had contractions, but like, I mean, I'm eating breakfast out. Like, I'm not worried, but I don't really have an anxious personality. So I was just like, yeah, I mean, I'll go home, but I don't think we're there.
Yeah.
And so it was all that day that I had kind of like early labor. And I remember my midwife and my doula were like, okay, take a warm bath, drink a glass of wine tonight, go to bed.
And try to go to bed. Yeah.
Yes, go to bed. if something's going to pick up, it's going to pick up tonight. So try to go to bed, like relax yourself as much as possible. And so I did that and they were right. I slept for some hours and then like in and out,
Yeah.
and then it was like, I want to say now I'm going 4 years back. So it was somewhere around 11 or 12 that I was like, okay, I think that I can't do this by myself anymore. I think I need to call my doula. And so she ended up getting there sometime early, early morning, like 1, 2 a.m. And she just was precious. She labored with me. I mean, I loved her. Just got me through it all. I remember laying on my bathroom floor. I mean, I was in all the positions. We had the pool that we had planned on birthing in the water, and hours just go by, hours and hours go by. And I'm like, what in the world? And so I remember my doula had called the midwife at some point overnight. She got there, I want to say she got there at like 6 a.m. So she was there, we're doing all the things. I had not been checked yet, but somewhere around, I remember being in the water, and thinking like, all right, Lord, like, let's just finish this up in an hour. Because at that point I had already thrown up. They thought that I was in transition and I was ready to be done. And I was nowhere close to being done. I was in and out of that pool that whole day. I was in the shower a lot. And I completely lost my appetite. Like, my husband's like, can I feed you anything? I mean, he was giving me water nonstop, but like, I didn't want to eat anything. I got to a place where I was pretty miserable. And it was midnight. So we got through that whole next day, and I'm like in and out, like very active labor. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. It was somewhere that evening they were like, "Okay, can we check you?" And I was like, "Yeah, at this point, like let's go ahead and do that." And they did not tell me where I was at that point, but I learned later on that I was 4 centimeters still.
Okay. So still kind of in the early part of it.
Yes. But, like, she was really low. It was really interesting because I felt like I remember, like, in the pool thinking, "All right, Lord, let's just do this while everybody's asleep." I remember my midwife was laying on the ground, my husband's sleeping in bed, like, everybody's kinda resting while I'm resting in the pool, and I'm like, "Let's just me and you do this. Let's just get this baby out." I thought we were so close, and we were not. So they checked me 4 centimeters. They told my husband, but they didn't tell me. And so I continued to labor, like in the bedside, lying, different things. And then it ended up being about midnight that I got out of the water and my belly, I don't know if you know this term, but I had a Bambles band that they didn't tell me about at that point. I learned later on what it was. But my belly, a pregnant belly, as if you cinched a belt around it, it looked like a bee. And like, I've never done this job before, so I don't know what a normal birthing belly looks like. Um, so all of a sudden, my midwife was like, I don't know that I like the look of this, but I think that she is posterior. So just in a funky position that's causing this. And so we just let it go. Like, I didn't know any better. And about midnight, I said, "Y'all, I'm going to need you to check me again because if we're not closer, I don't know that I have a lot left to give in this time." Like, we're almost 48 hours in at this point, or just at 48 hours in at this point, from, when the initial signs started. And I was like, this is a lot. Like, I was in a lot of pain. And so they checked me and I was still at 4. And I was like, let's go. I'm done with this. So I hated the idea of transferring to the hospital, especially because I only had midwifery care. And so in North Carolina, I know a lot of people know this, but that, you have to be cautious about where you're transferring to and how they're going to treat you at the hospital that you end up transferring to if you've only had midwifery care. And I knew we didn't want to vaccinate and I knew we didn't want to like go through all of those things. And so I was petrified on transferring to the hospital 10 minutes down the road. So they were like, well, if you transfer to Regional Davis in Statesville, they are very used to getting home birth or
Birth center transfer.
birth center transfers. And so you're probably going to end up in better care. They're going to be kinder to you there, basically. And so at that point, I was like, okay, let's go. So that's about 45 minutes from my house, which, gosh, hindsight, that is the most traumatic part of our whole first birth story for my husband
Was the
was
car ride?
our ride. Because he was like, here I am, you're like in an emergency situation. We didn't know how emergent the situation was at that point, but like, I am clearly not feeling well. And he's got to drive me 98 miles an hour, 45 minutes away. Like, it was not fun.
So did your midwife think it was an emergency situation, or or it was just exhaustion, like you were really tired and you wanted to go get like a nap,
Yes. Well,
basically?
yeah. So she was like, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Like, cause I was like, you guys, do you think we should transfer at this point? And she was like, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Like, if you want to, but she was so lackadaisical. And that's how she was through my whole entire, prenatal care, which I loved. And then labor was that same way. And now hindsight, I can say, like, maybe don't pick the lackadaisical midwife because it was very, yeah, I'm going to just leave it in your hands. And
But like baby's heart rate was okay, and
baby's heart
like
rate was okay.
there
Hmm.
weren't any like you weren't like bleeding a lot,
Nope.
and okay, so no other
No,
signs. Okay.
no. Outside of, I've been doing this for a really long time and my
Yeah.
belly looked the way that it looked. Now, my doula at the time was a brand new midwife. And I learned this later that she thought that that was a Bandel's band. My midwife was like, no, it's not. It's just posterior. She's just posterior.
Can you explain more what a Bandel span is?
Yes, a Bandel's band is when your uterus, so you have obstructed labor. It's a late sign of an obstructed labor. And so your uterus bands up and essentially creates tension at the middle, and you're at risk for a uterine rupture, like very at risk for uterine rupture. I think it's like 0.005% of women have ever had a Bandel's band. It's a very rare. Have you heard of it before?
I've heard of the term, but I've never had a client with one, or I've never known anyone personally with one.
Yeah, that's literally every single person I've ever spoken to has said that same thing. Like, I've seen it in a textbook and that's it.
Yeah. So it was muscular, like your uterus was tightening in this one specific area so tight that it's almost like the tension wasn't equally distributed among your entire uterus. It was like concentrating in that one
Right.
spot, which would have not been very effective at pushing her
Right.
down and dilating your cervix.
Yeah. And we have an idea of what the cause of that is now. At the time we didn't. So it was really hard for me to pee while I was in labor. And so I was going, but again, not knowing, like, this is my first time through this. Like, I'm just going to the bathroom what I think I should be going to the bathroom. Of course, like, typically a midwife isn't measuring the amount of urine you're urinating. You're just, did you go to the bathroom? Yes or no? So, yes, I did go to the bathroom. It got to a point where I was so uncomfortable, I could not sit on the toilet. And so I would have to pee on hands and knees in the shower. There was trickling, but for what I was intaking, I wasn't outputting. And so, what we have determined, likely the cause of that Bandel's band was because my bladder was so full that it obstructed my labor. It obstructed baby from getting down.
Me down. And you don't know why you couldn't empty your bladder.
Nope. Nope. But when I got to the hospital, finally, I got checked in and I was like, I don't care what happens. You just have to get her out. Like, literally every bit of the, I want a natural everything. I don't care what happens. Just get her out of me. And the lady was like, do you want to sit in a wheelchair? And I'm like, I cannot sit. I cannot physically sit. So I'm going to walk to the room with you. And so we got there and the nurse, second time that day I heard, like, I've never seen this before. And I thought she was talking about the Bandel's band. And I was like, yeah. And she said, no, she's really low, but you're not dilated. Like, I've never seen those two things paired, So she's like, she's right there, but we got to get you opened up. And so she was a gem too. She did perineal massage. She got me comfy peanut ball, all the things. They ended up giving me an epidural, which later on, once I learned what a Bandel's band was, it turns out that that is like the way to loosen a Bandel's
Let
band.
it go. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, thank God for Western medicine in this scenario. So I had the epidural.
Which then you probably would have gotten a catheter, which would have emptied your bladder, which would
Yes.
have helped
Yes.
with all of that.
So I had 2 full bags come off my bladder. Like, it was
Dang.
very, very full. And
Which that's
so
dangerous too.
yes. So all of that together, we didn't know how dangerous it was or, like, the condition that I was in really. I just was really tired and ready to be done with it. So yeah, got the epidural. I think we got there at like 3 in the morning. Continued to labor. Like I got to nap. It was nice. I woke up. It was funny because like after the epidural, Zach was on the phone with my mom and he's like, "First smile I've seen in a while from your girl. So I think we're doing okay now." And so the doctor there had to manually move her. So they gave me the epidural. He stuck his whole arm up there and physically moved her so that she was in a better position to come out. And then
So was she OP then? And did
she
they
was.
flip her to OA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And they said that they weren't sure that she had started that way, but that she may have flipped in the process of like trying to figure out how to get out. So yeah, they got her locked and loaded. We ended up having a successful vaginal birth. It was kind of funny because she was born at 10:36 in the morning, a whole day after I was like, okay, Lord, an hour. Let's have her at 10:30. Like we had her at 10:30. It was just the next day.
24 hours later. One more day
Yes.
instead of one more hour.
Yes. So 56 hours total. That was Charlie. So she came out and she was very gray. Meconium covered her. And they said they think that she probably went to the bathroom twice inside of me. Like just crazy. So they swept her away in the room still, but like suctioned her and got her cleaned up. Her APGAR scores were not great. I don't remember what they were exactly. I have it written down somewhere, but they were not great at the minute. And then at the 5, she, perked back up and we had her, looking good. And then things were good from there. We were in the hospital for a day and had to sign all the waivers that, I wasn't going to get antibiotics. She wasn't going to get whatever. They kind of fought me on all that, but I kind of knew to expect that.
Yeah.
And we went home.
So your doula stayed with you for that whole experience.
Yes.
Obviously, your midwife couldn't come because of the legalities in North Carolina and her not having privileges and stuff. I wasn't sure if you hired a CPM or a CNM, but
so she wasn't allowed to go with me, but I was allowed to have one person go with me because of COVID. So I don't know that she would have gone with me either way, but my doula came with me because of that like one person rule.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was with me for the entirety of everything. One detail that I forgot. So Charlie was out. They were suctioning her and getting her cleaned up. And the next thing I know, the doctor's like, "Okay, we got your placenta." And I was like, "Wait, what? You have my placenta already?" And it was like 2 minutes. I mean, it may have been 5, but it was really, really quick. And I remember thinking, "No, how do you have that already?" And he's like, "Oh, that's the easy part." And so later on, I learned from my doula that he pulled my placenta out. Like,
sounds
quick.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is like a little bit of a precursor to what happens next.
If this podcast has been with you through pregnancy, labor, or those quiet postpartum moments, and it's helped you feel more confident, grounded, or less alone, I want to share something new. You can now support the show with a small monthly donation or a one-time gift. Your support helps keep these conversations going and makes this resource available to parents who really need it. If this show has supported you in this season of life, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider supporting it back. Visit the show notes to find the link to donate. I truly thank you for being a part of the surrendered birth community.
So we go home, everything's great. So my milk didn't come in well, and it ended up coming in a little bit, but she was really down in weight. And my midwife came at that like 3-day visit and she was like, I think we need to consult a lactation consultant. And I don't want to bash this midwife, but I mean, there were just things that I think that a midwife should know. Like we were talking about pumping, and I was like, okay, I don't know. I didn't plan on pumping at all. So I don't know how this thing works. I don't know, whatever. And so I was asking her, like, how does it even stick to me? Didn't know you needed a pumping bra. Like, this is how ignorant to the whole process I am. And she's like, oh, it'll just suction. It just suctions. And I'm like,
Well, you have to hold it on there
yes.
or wear a pumping bra. Those are the two
Right.
options.
Yeah, but, like, she was just like, I mean, it'll yeah, like, she just didn't walk me through any of that. So I felt very, undereducated on the whole nursing pumping journey, and so turns out I have insufficient glandular tissue,
Oh, no.
and that is, like, another, what, 2% of women actually have low supply, and I get to fall into that category too. I mean, we went through some trauma getting her here, but it was that like derailed me a little bit. I wanted to nurse. I did at that point I didn't know. I thought you just nursed because you wanted to or you didn't because you didn't want to. I never had any idea that there was like a gamut of reasons why this is a really hard thing to do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that was a really hard pill to swallow and they were like we got to get her donor milk now. Like now. And so, I cried a lot over
I
that
bet.
and really, really just wanted to nurse. So they were like, okay, well, these are the things that we can do. Here's supplements, here's this, here's that tea. Let's pump 8 times a day, around the clock, triple feed. And so I did it all. I mean, I really did it all.
Did any of it help?
I ended up collecting more, but it didn't make me produce more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, I pumped 8 times a day that time, which I'm not doing that this time around. So I collected every time I pumped, but this time I'm only pumping once a day. So I'm only collecting once a day. So she's getting a lot, like, my second baby's getting a lot less milk from me because I'm not pumping, but mentally, let me tell you, I'm in a much better place. um, so we learned that I had IGT. We also learned that Charlie had a tongue and lip tie. So 2 strikes against,
That combination's not good.
yeah. So we got her revised very early, hoping that that would help like my damaged nipples and all of the stuff that was happening. And we're on a triple feeding journey. She also was very refluxy, like projectile vomit refluxy. And so at 13 days old, she projectile vomited and like sucked it back up, turned blue, had to try to get her to the emergency room. We called my doula at that point because my midwife was out of town, and she's like, "I don't like her color. If you think you can get her to the hospital quicker than an ambulance can get to you, get there." And so we got out on. At that point, you don't know what time of day it is. I mean, these 13 days old. I don't know if it's morning or evening at this point. And so we get out onto South Tryon, and we live pretty close to the city, and it's a parking lot out there. And so we were like, shoot, we got to get to a parking lot and call the ambulance at this point. And so they walked me through how to give infant CPR at 13 days old. And I did that on my husband's floorboard of his car. And they got to her and got her vitals back, and she was good. But it was just one thing after another, after another, after another in that season. And then we found out my husband was going to lose his job because he wasn't going to get the COVID vaccine. And then I had a postpartum hemorrhage at 3.5 weeks.
What?
Postpartum. Oh, yeah.
Is that from your OB pulling your placenta out at 2 minutes?
Well, I, for a long time, said that. So I blamed that doctor. I was so angry. So I'm 3.5 weeks postpartum. I go to the bathroom and it's like someone turns a faucet on. I was just bleeding nonstop. And so we call my midwife, and I had fired my midwife that day for all sorts of other reasons. But I was head to toe in hives prior to that. And I had gone to urgent care and they were like, you must be having an allergic reaction to the nystatin I was on because we had thrush because of all of our feeding issues.
Oh, girl, you went through it in the first 3 weeks. Dang.
I know. And so went off the nystatin, but I was like, y'all, I promise you something is wrong with my body. Like I'm a body worker. I'm a massage therapist. Like I'm pretty in tune with my body. And I'm like, something is wrong. And so I asked them to draw labs and, we were just like, maybe this is PUPS, that liver
Right.
scenario. And we could not figure out what was going on. Well, we were 3.5 weeks postpartum. I'm like, Zach, we got to get to the hospital at this point. On the way to the hospital, Charlie projectile vomits and sucks it up again. And so, like, on the way to the hospital, we have to I'm bleeding heavily. We have to pull over, make sure she's breathing, get there. Like, the whole team of the hospital, like, comes to our attention at that point. And, they, like, she was fine. They asked me several times if I have ever had a blood transfusion. And I was like, no, like, why do you keep asking me this question? And they were like, well, you have an antibody in your blood. And I'm like, what do you mean I have an antibody in my blood? And nowhere in my prenatal was that antibody ever present. So apparently at some point my body created an antibody. It's antibody big E, against the baby, which I didn't have any awareness of that. But they were telling me during COVID that they didn't have blood to give me. And I'm in the hospital for a hemorrhage. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with that information. Well, when the surgeon came in, he asked me again and he's like, okay, you have retained placenta. And at this point, I didn't know what all that meant. Or he said retained product. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, your placenta, you have a large piece of placenta that's been left behind. And I was like, okay. And he's like, that's what caused your hemorrhage. The problem is we don't have your blood. And I'm like, what do I do with that? So he was like, so you have two options. You can either take Cytotec, which I didn't know what it was, or you can have a DNC, which I've never had surgery in my life either. And so I was like, okay, well, tell me like what you think the best course of action is. And we have our 3.5-week-old baby here. And he's like, well, I would say go ahead and take the Cytotec, but we're going to send you home with it. And I'm like, what? You're going to send me home? He explains to me that this drug is going to push the rest of my product
Placenta
out
out.
and that I might experience one more big gush before it's all over. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable leaving this hospital when you told me that there's no blood to give me, but in the hospital, but you want me to go home and maybe bleed more? Like, none of this makes sense or makes me feel good. And so he left and the nurse actually like pulled me aside and she was like, I need to tell you something. That doctor is a man. And what he didn't tell you is that drug is going to put your body back into labor. And it is not comfortable. It is not fun to go through. And basically, like, she couldn't say I wouldn't do it that way, but she was like, I would pray with your husband about what your next steps are. And so,
Right, because Cytotec is going to give you contractions.
yes.
Yeah.
And so she kind of made me feel like, okay, that's not the best route. So I asked them if I were to do Cytotec, can I be in the hospital? Can you guys put me in a room to do this here rather than send me home because I just don't feel comfortable with that. And they were like, no, we really can't because you have the baby here. And I was like, well, there's nobody that can come pick up my baby. She has to be with me. My husband has her. And so that nurse that actually told me like I wouldn't do the Cytotec, she was like, let me see what I can do. And she ended up going to get us a labor and delivery room. So there was a bassinet so the baby could stay with us. So she hooked us up with a labor and delivery and we were like, okay, let's try this drug and let's just see. Like I've been through 56 hours of this. I'll be fine if I do it again. So I'm on pins and needles waiting for this drug to kick into my system, like, and send me back into labor basically. And like hours tick by. And my husband at this point, he's a very calm, cool, and collected man. And he's like, what is happening?
Are you
Like,
still bleeding?
yes. Now, I will tell you, I was bleeding less than when it originally happened. My midwife, when I called her, she told me, "We left blue cohosh at your house. Take that on your way to the hospital." And I don't know if that is what stopped the bleeding, like, or lessened it, I guess, at that point, but I wasn't bleeding like I was initially. So I take this drug, it's not doing anything. Zach finally goes out and he's like, "Can someone please help my wife? Like, here we are waiting for, something to happen and nothing's happening." And so they came in and they were like, "Okay, well, that surgeon is gone. So we're waiting." It's like 7 a.m. at this point. And we got to the hospital at like 3 a.m. So a new surgeon comes in, and I'll never forget her for the rest of my life. And she comes in to see me, and I said, "I took this medicine. It's supposed to be working." And she said, she like put her hand on my leg and she said, "You need to thank your lucky stars that medicine didn't work." And I said, "Okay." She probably shouldn't have said that, right? For legalities. But she said, "I just looked at your scans and you have a lot of placenta left behind and you have a lot of blood clots in there. And if that drug would have worked, it probably would have caused another hemorrhage, and we don't have your blood." And so I was like, "Oh, great. Okay." So I was like, "What do we do?" And she said, you have to have surgery today." She said, "I'm going to fit you in between my schedule." And I said, is it scary?" And she said, "This whole thing is scary. Like, every bit of what you have gone through is scary, but it's a routine DNC. We're going to get in there. We're going to scrape it all out, and you're going to go home and you're going to be much better for that." So that's what we did. We had a DNC that day, and I got out of that, and my hives were gone. So she told me that she thinks that I was starting to go septic, and that's why my body was head to toe hives. Like, red flag, red flag, something's going on here. But so we went home, and I had been passing blood clots like crazy, like the size of my palm up until that. And like, it was like 2 days later, and I wasn't bleeding at all anymore. It was wild.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really like the start of our climb back up, like out of the crazy of my first birth.
You had like a wild first 3 to 4 weeks postpartum. That is crazy. I'm still slightly confused about the antibody situation because usually that type of thing would happen maybe with a subsequent baby, with like a second, third, fourth, whatever. But to have it happen with your first baby is like super, super rare. So I'm not really sure how that would have happened unless there was some sort of trauma, which it doesn't sound like there was, like before you gave birth to her or during her birth. Because I'm assuming you guys were different blood types, you and your baby.
No, we don't have different blood types. That's what I was confused about too, because when I had my antibody screen first trimester, nothing was there.
Right.
And then when I hemorrhaged, they told me it was there. They told me that I would have that forever.
Right.
And then fast forward to this last birth that I just had,
Uh-huh.
I didn't have it.
It makes me wonder if they got your blood test wrong then.
Wrong.
Like, which is totally a possibility. And that happens way more than you would think, is different blood results coming back, like getting mixed up with somebody else's. That doesn't make any sense to me why they would have said that.
Well, and that's why, like, this time around, when we heard that, I was like, "Wait, are you sure? Can you double check that?" Because they told me that I would have this forever.
Yeah, and you would.
And I don't. And I don't have it anymore.
Which means you never had it in the first place. So, wow, Nikki, I'm just so engaged in everything you're saying. Okay. Wow. Okay, so after that first month, things start to get better.
Yeah, I mean, triple feeding is no joke.
No.
I mean, that was miserable. And I am the type of person that is going to see something through to the best of my ability. And I learned about myself in that time that I will turn over every single rock that I possibly can for the betterment of my child and to my detriment. And I learned that. And I think that it's something that, gosh, if I could just hold the hands of every mom that's struggling to feed their baby and just pray with them, it was a really hard season for me to go through that. And it was really crazy because I'm going through this very maternal, hardship that my husband can't fully ever understand, right? But I am like killing myself to do this job. And he's just lost his job because of what he stands for and believes in. And he's trying to provide for our family. And I can't fully understand that. So we're parallel suffering, not really able to help one another in this brand new season of parenting this tiny human. And he continued to tell me, like, I will support you, but I don't want you to measure yourself on drops of milk. And he's so precious. So he wore glasses for a really long time. And he said, Nikki, God, like on this side of heaven, none of us are going to have perfect bodies. My eyes don't work and function the way that yours do, but I would never feel like I'm less than, nor would I ever expect anybody to think that I'm less than because my eyes don't work the way that they should. So your boobs don't work the way that they should. Like, let's take the emotion out of it. And I understand that you want to feed your baby this way, but like, God just, your boobs just are not working perfectly. And like, don't measure yourself and your mothering off of that one piece because that would be really silly if I measured myself on my eyeballs. And it was like really a great moment of transition for me in the like striving that I was in. Um, and so we ended up on donor milk. Like I triple fed for 7 months and
Whoa.
around the clock. Yeah, it was not great for me.
That's a really long time to triple
Yeah.
feed.
Yeah. I cut down from 8 times a day to like 4 times a day, somewhere around 4 months because she went on a little bit of a nursing strike, and I was like, "Well, if you're not gonna do this, I'm not working so hard at it."
Hmm.
And then she was like, "Actually, just kidding. I still wanna do this." And so I kept at like 4 times a day, but she mainly for 14 months was fed off of other mama's milk, and I'm so stinking grateful for community, and God really just ministered to my heart in that time. It was one of the hardest seasons of my life. And I remember standing in the shower, just like weeping over making milk. And he reminded me of the verse. Insufficient is a really hard label to put on a mom.
Hmm.
And that I like cannot stand the full IGT label and how it makes you feel because you already feel insufficient, and then just like stick the word on it. And I'm showering and I so clearly heard the Lord tell me my grace is sufficient for you. Like, you don't need to be sufficient because I am. And like that was a huge moment for me. And he reminded me of the verses. It's Matthew 6 where he talks about like feeding the birds and they don't worry about a thing. Like, I feed the birds. Do you not think I'm going to feed your daughter? I love her far more than I love those birds. I love you. Like, don't fret so much about it. And that just became like the scripture that I held. And we'd have freezer fulls of donor milk. And then we'd get down to our last brick, which is like one little bag. And I'm like, all right, Lord, you said you were going to feed her. So make it happen. And he did every single time. And I have created the most beautiful relationships and shared the gospel. And like, it's just been an awesome opportunity for him to show me, like, okay, this part of you isn't perfect, but you can still bring it for my glory. And it so has been that way.
That's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
to hear that. And like, just even like the redemption in that right there. Ah,
That's first birth.
that was the first birth. And now your second is how old? She's newer. She's fresh.
She's new. She will be 4 months at the end of the month.
So let's dive into her story then.
We always wanted like 2 years between, just like everybody, kind of everybody plans for their babies to be that way. And because we got pregnant so quickly with Charlie, we just thought it was going to be that way. But I also had a lot of birth trauma, and I knew that I probably needed to see a birth trauma counselor prior to jumping back into that. It was one of those things that I always wanted to write her birth story down. And I really think that part of why it took me so long to coordinate this with you is because Charlie's story is hard.
Yeah.
And I never wrote it down. I mean, Highland's story is already written down, and I never wrote Charlie's down. And I just think it's like hard for me to tangle with. And so I feel like at that point, I like put all this baggage in the corner, and I was like, I'll deal with that when I can. And you just really can't for a while. And so adoption had been on my heart since I was a little girl too. And so I was like, maybe we adopt next and, have like once I get through some birth trauma stuff, we can like try that again. And so I was jogging there and I thought my husband was with me, but it got to a point where he was like, I don't know that the Lord has fully called me to that yet. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I don't know that it's going to happen right this second. And so I knew that I needed to pause because you can't adopt a baby and not have both parties really fully ready for that. And so
Right.
we were like, okay, well, I guess we'll start trying. And we were getting close to Charlie's second birthday at this point, and it just didn't happen. And we walked through a year of infertility, which was really hard too, And then, and I had gone to the doctor, previous doctor that I had been seeing, and she's like, "We're not going to do blood type and testing and all that kind of stuff, hormone testing, until you're well past a year. Like sometimes it takes a while." And so I was like, "Okay." Well, we got to about 10 months and I was just exhausted by the whole fertility trying mess. And so I reached out to my PA and I was like, "Hey, will you run some labs for me?" And she's like, "Yeah, but let's also do an ultrasound because of your birth trauma the first time around. Like, I just want to make sure there's not scar tissue there that's keeping you from getting pregnant." And she's like, "You're so healthy. You got pregnant so quickly with Charlie. Like, let's rule that out too." And so with that ultrasound, we found out that she said to me, "The good thing is your polyp hasn't grown in size." And I said, "My what?" And she said, "Your endometrial polyp. Like I'm seeing from your ultrasound 2 years ago that it was there." And I was like, "This is the first I'm hearing of this." And so somewhere someone dropped the ball again and didn't let me know that I had an endometrial polyp that could be harmful or could be fine. So she sent me to a new OB, and that OB was like, "Let's get rid of that and let's see what happens." And I actually went to my follow up from that DNC pregnant.
Whoa.
So that was definitely what was keeping us from being pregnant. But in that time, I had heard from the Lord, and Zach had heard from the Lord, two separate occasions, that it was time to adopt. And so we started that process and then found out that we were pregnant. And so we were ecstatic. This was, gosh, a long time. I don't even know how much time, but a long time that we had been trying. And so we were elated that we were pregnant, and we ended up losing that baby 8 days later.
Mm.
And so that was really, really hard to wrestle with God over. Like, why, after all this time? And like, why let us get pregnant? Like, you didn't let us get pregnant for a year. Why let us get pregnant now just to lose a baby? And so that was really hard. And we really felt paralyzed in what way to walk because we both heard from the Lord that it was time to adopt, but then we naturally got pregnant. And so we were like, all right, God, what do we do? And so we prayed and prayed, and we just decided, you know what, we're going to walk forward with both hands open, and whatever happens, happens. But the adoption agency that we started walking with is a Christian agency. And if you get pregnant, you have to pause your adoption. And so it kind of made things complicated. Like, how do you not put this in our own, like, how do you not put it in your own hands at that point, So we just moved forward and we didn't get pregnant. We didn't get pregnant. We didn't get pregnant. We didn't get pregnant. And so I was like, what is happening? So we got through our entire home study, which is about a 6-month process.
I was going to say that takes a while.
Yeah. And so we were just like, okay, maybe it's just time to adopt. And like we got cleared. I remember we were so excited. Um, it was a lot of work to get through like all the hoops that you have to do for a home study.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was just full-fledged trucking in that path. And we got cleared. 3 days later, found out that I was pregnant with Highland.
Of course you did.
Yes. And I mean, it was like we were planning our fundraisers for everybody to, like, our friends and family to come alongside our adoption. Like, we had announced that we were adopting, that we were like, it was crazy. I felt like we were like, pranked. Just kidding. Like, we were like, Lord, what are we doing here? So we paused. They were like, okay, we're gonna wait to pause your adoption journey until you are halfway through your pregnancy because of your loss, just to make sure that everything goes well. And then, Lord willing, you have a healthy baby, and when that baby's a year old, you can pick back up. And so that's what we did. At about 8 weeks into this last pregnancy, I bled and I was petrified that we were going to lose her. And God clearly told me that this one was going to be okay. That, I mean, like it was wild. He just really comforted me in that. And I had another beautiful pregnancy. I mean, first trimester is always tough to like get through the sickness and like, I threw up a couple times, but nothing like some women have. I know, like I had a
Yeah.
blessed pregnancy. Um, I worked out through both of them, like burn boot camp, you know, workouts through all of them. It was great. So when we found out about this baby, God had already given me her name. Her name is Highland Grace. We found out she was a girl. And we knew her due date was going to be close to Charlie's birthday. So Charlie was born June 24th, and my due date was June 27th. And Charlie desperately wanted her to be born on her birthday. And I said, well, you talk to God about that. Like, I have no control over when it's very real possibility that that could happen. And so we inched closer and closer and closer. And I had 3 weeks of prodromal labor with Highland.
Mm.
And so I would like text Zach, like, if this isn't the real day, this is stupid. And then it wasn't the real day for like 3 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, so we're like inching closer and closer to her fourth birthday. And I remember praying and just like asking God, will you just give me one more morning with her? Like, let me celebrate. We had this like big bunk bed reveal that we were doing for her birthday. And I just really wanted to celebrate her independently one more day or one more time, and not be like laid up 2 days with a brand new baby and not get to celebrate my baby's birthday. And so we get to the morning of her birthday and we did the reveal and it was so fun. And if you asked Charlie in that time, like, when is Highland coming? She told you on my birthday. Like, I asked God and she's coming on my birthday. And so we took her to like this indoor water park that morning, and I was 39 and 4. And we're splashing around. And the next thing you know, we're like standing waiting for a lazy river tube. And I'm like, like I felt a little something gush. And I was like, I think I need to go to the bathroom. And so I go to the bathroom and like reminder, I've had prodromal labor for 3 weeks. So I'm having contractions, but like I've had contractions for 3 weeks. So I'm
Right.
like, whatever. So I go to the bathroom and I'm like, that's a little mucusy. But I had lost my mucus plug the week before. So I was like, I don't really know what that was. And I had a slow leak with Charlie. So I was like, maybe we're doing this again. I don't know. And so I come out and Zach's like, is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that was. Like, let's just carry on. Well, then it happened again. And this time it was like a little tinge. And so he's like, you better text your midwife and ask her if it's okay that we're here because we're basically at a public pool.
Okay, wait, who did you end up, not, you don't have to name her name, but who did you hire for your midwife? Like, what kind of birth were you planning this time
Oh,
after what
yeah.
happened last time?
Oh, yeah. There's so many details I left out there. So we had planned a hospital birth this time because my husband couldn't get there with me. I wanted a home birth again. And he was like, I cannot fathom driving you to the hospital again. Like, I cannot do it. And I know there are plenty of women that are like, it's your body, blah, blah, and I think that even Christian women will say that. And I am very much a God first, then my husband, like Zach's got to be on board. And I have to trust that if he's putting a stop sign in front of me, like God knows that Zach is the only thing that's going to stop me from a home birth. And he did. And so I walked through and wrestled with God my whole pregnancy about this. And then I was 27 weeks pregnant. And one day Zach just comes up behind me and he's like loving on me. And he's like, hey, I just want to tell you, like, thank you. This is a big job. And I'm like fully recognizing that this is a big job. And I've been talking to God a lot lately, and I want you to know that you can have a home birth if you want. And I about fell over because we're like 2 seconds from our third trimester, and now you're telling me we can have a home birth. Like, I literally threw out all of my like my research on who, I wasn't going to use the midwife from last time because I think that there's a whole lot that went sideways with her. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I feel like God was like, okay, she threw her stuff out. Now she's fully surrendered to this. And now we can like actually move on
Do it.
and do it. And so, I mean, he could have told me the sky was purple that day and I would have, it was wild. So he was like, I said, well, baby, I don't know if there's going to be any midwives available at this point because we're like in the end. And he's like, I mean, we can go through the hospital route if you want to. And I was like, I'm gonna make some phone calls today. Like, I
Wait,
really
let me
don't.
just hold on a second. Let me call some people. Let me make some
And
calls.
so I did. And my doula from the first time, remember I told you that she was like early in her midwifery at that point.
Right, right.
She has been my girl for, I mean, for all things natural, like, hey, I feel like I've got an infection. What herbs am I going to use for this? Like, she's been in my back pocket for 4 years. And I love her. And she walked through some really hard stuff with me. And initially, I didn't like immediately go thinking that she was going to be our midwife because I didn't think that Zach would be comfy with anybody that was a part of our birth team the first time. And so we kind of are like, trying to figure out who we're going to be using for a midwife. And he's like, why are we not using Brooke? And I was like, are you okay with us using Brooke? And he's like, yeah, she's not the one that did anything wrong. And I was like, well, let me call Brooke. So I called her and she actually is the one who gave me several other midwives information. And she's just that way. Like, she's like, my heart is not going to be hurt. Like, I want you to have a successful home birth. If I am there, I'll be honored. But if not, here's who I would tell you to be there. So she actually made room in her schedule for us, which was a blessing because she was by my side for everything the first time with all of the crazy things that happened. She didn't have to be like caught up to speed on any of it. She knew
Right. She
all
knew
of
your history.
yeah. So she's the she's the midwife that I text and I was like, "Hey, is it okay that I'm at a public pool right now? Because I don't really know what's going on, but I think we might be having a baby today." And her and my doula this time around were like, "Yeah, you're probably like that was probably maybe just a little bit more mucus plug that didn't fully come out last time or a week ago or whatever." And so she's like, water doesn't flush back up into your vagina, so you're fine, like there. And I was like, okay. So we've been there for like an hour and a half or so, and Charlie's like, "Hey, Mama, will you go down this water slide with me?" And we're at a kiddie place, okay? And I was like, "Sure." I don't know why. It just
Why
was like,
you said yes.
"Sure, I will." And it's a straight down. Like I was just like, "Oh, this is no big deal." I mean, I came in hot at 39 and 4. I was a big old lady. And my husband is like, "Oh, what were we thinking? Do it like what?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." But I stood up and I was like, I felt like a gush. And I was like, "Oh, we're going to have a baby today." Like that was definitely my water breaking at the community splash place. So I text the midwife and the doula, and I text a picture of the water slide, and I'm like, "So may have gone down this, also may have had a big gush afterward. Like, pretty sure we're having a baby today." And my my doula was like, "What in the world?" And my midwife was like, "Why did I not think I had to specify don't go down a water slide because you can absolutely have water flush back up in your vagina if you're going down a water slide." What? I just sent like a my bad like little emoji and my doula was like, "This is such a second mom like going
Such a
into labor."
second time mom
Oh
story.
yeah. Absolutely. So kind of fun and funny how it all started, but that was at like 12:30, I would say, in the afternoon. So like God gave me my heart's desire to like get that sweet time with my girl before we started. But I remember we were driving home and I felt like I had to cross my legs, like more was coming. And with Charlie, I just had that little bit
Week.
that happened. And like I ended up having a full water break like during labor, like during the more active part of my labor. But so we get home and Brooke was like, when you get home, look in your home birth kit. You have a swab that's going to tell us if this is actually amniotic fluid. So find that. So I am digging through this box with my legs crossed, like I cannot find this. It's like a needle in a haystack. finally find it, get to the bathroom, and Niagara Falls itself falls out of me. I mean, water break like I have never even seen before. And put the swab underneath it. Sure was my water breaking. So I was like, okay, y'all, we're doing this today. So I ended up going into labor. Like my contractions started right after that, which I didn't know is like sometimes doesn't always happen that way.
Right. But since you'd been having contractions, then
Yeah.
like the prodromal ones, then
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah, so pretty straightforward. I had prayed heavily that we would have a redemptive birth this time. And I had to get to a place when I thought that we were going to be in the hospital that redemption can come in the hospital. Like God is not only going to show up in a home birth. God is not only going to show up with scriptures written on my wall. Like God can be in that room with me in the hospital and we can make it redemptive anyway. And so, like, that was just my main prayer, like, through my entire pregnancy is like, Lord, redeem this whole process for me. But that's kind of hard. You got to hold that loosely because you're like, if things go sideways, like, it can't be God's fault. You know what I mean? So, but I prayed that pretty hard. So, we had a very smooth um, labor. I remember being really confused on when to call the doula because I only had a 56-hour labor to go off of. And, they say second births like happen so much faster. But I mean, my first one was so long. So I went back and forth on when to call her. And I actually sent her home one time and she came back. And I was in early labor when she got there, walked through some things with her. She ended up coming out. I'm in my like extra building space and she came out here and read for a little while and I tried to rest. Um, and then she ended up calling the midwife. I want to say at like 6:10, my midwife got there. And so I just worked through labor. Like I worshiped. It was like my daughter was there the whole time, which was like another really big prayer of mine. And we weren't really sure if she was gonna she's a wild child, so we weren't really sure how it was gonna go with like Zach was just wanting to make sure that all eyes were on me and she wasn't distracting.
Mhm.
So that was a blessing. So Brooke gets there, my best friend was there, Zach was there, and then my daughter was there. And we just moved through labor. And this time we talked about if my bladder ended up being an issue, we would just cath me. Like it wasn't a question. Brooke was fully prepared to do that. She's like, we're not going to end up in the same scenario again. And so at one point, we're like, I want to say it's like around 7, and I started getting a little whiny, like, oh, I thought this one was going to be fast. And they were like, you're only 7 hours in, you're fine. And I hadn't been checked yet. She had said shortly thereafter, she asked me when the last time I went to the bathroom was. And I was like, I don't know, it's been a while. And she's like, okay, why don't you try to go for me? So I tried and I couldn't go. And all of a sudden that felt paralyzing. And she's like, it's okay. Like, you just went not that long ago. Like, I have it documented that you went a couple hours ago. Like, I'm not worried about it. And I was trying really hard not to be worried about it. But in the back of my mind, like, this is what the catalyst was for the rest of my crazy with the first one. And so I remember talking to my doula and she was like, do you feel like it's going to be a mental block? Like, even if it's not a physical block, do you feel like that's going to mentally cause you issue? And I said, yeah, I do. I would rather y'all just cath me. And Brooke was like, wait, really? Like, I hadn't even been checked at this point. And she's like, you want me to cath you? And I said, yes. She said, Nikki, I don't think we're there. And I said, I don't care. Just do it. And she's like, can I please check you first before we do that? And I was like, okay. So she checked me. And so this was about 9 o'clock. She checked me and I was 7 centimeters, but I was a -1.
Mhm.
And so, they checked me. They were like, okay, she's slightly asynclitic, so her head's a little wonky. And that may be because I felt like she was. It felt like it went from 0 to 60 with her, like that it was gonna be fast. And so they were like, okay, this might have been what slowed down your active moving into transition. Like, it's just a little bit wonky in there. But like I barely had any pee in there. So the calf probably wasn't worth the pain that it caused, but it mentally like moved me from like, could this be a problem? And so they were like, okay, well, now we have information. We want you to do the second position in the
Miles circuit.
circuit, and let's hang there for 20 minutes. And then we're going to do like the side lying, like where your leg is off the bed after that
Mhm.
to try to get her like lined up really well. And so I was laying there and I remember like, this is brutal laying in that position where I was at in labor. I did not like it at all. And I was like, how long do I have to be here? And they're like, 20 minutes if you can handle it. And I was like, okay. So we got to the second one and it was every bit of me that could lay there for 20 minutes. And they were like, okay, you're good. Like you can stand up, you can get back in the water if you want to. Cause I had been in the water a little bit before that. And it was really sweet. My daughter brought all her birthday balloons and she put them in my birth pool. So my midwife was like, "Never have I seen this where like there's a mom in a water birth pool full of birthday balloons." But it was really fun. We like did happy birthday cupcakes in between contractions and all the things. But so they were like, "You can get back in the water if you want to." And I remember laying there for a second, just like trying to like get my bearings. And I was like, "Y'all, my body is trying to push her out." And they were like, "Good." And I was like, "What?" Because with Charlie, I never experienced that feeling, that fetal ejection reflex ever. And so it was mind blowing when you feel that. And like, you're like, it felt like God was just like, "Okay, I'm going to put autopilot on now. Like, I got it from here." It was crazy. So I stand up and I like remember I had two contractions that I just stood at the edge of my bed before I got back in the water. And I remember feeling the most comfortable like on my knees with my arms like over the wall of the birth pool. And it felt just like that. It felt like transition. Like my body went from kind of like I had to do a job to like this is happening in me. And like I'm a part of it, but it felt so out of body at the same time. It was wild. My noises changed, the way I move changed. Like it just all felt so very transitional. And I felt like I was going to get sick, but I never did end up getting sick with Highland. Um, but I remember they were asking Zach because Charlie's asleep by this point. My best friend had put her to bed, and it was just my heart's desire. And Charlie's heart's desire was to be a part of the entire thing. Like she wanted to catch the baby. Like she was very, very involved and invested in my birth. So they like people in the room were asking Zach, like, "Are you going to get Charlie?" And I remember at one point he kind of got snappy, which he doesn't ever get snappy. And he said, "I'll get her when I'm ready." And I remember thinking to myself, like, "Oh, he's nervous. Like something's got him nervous right now." And turns out he just had no clue how close we were because his only experience was the first time around with an
Right.
epidural. And they're telling me to push and they're telling me, like, they're instructing me on what to do. And this time around, I am literally just quiet. I mean, I'm making vocal noises, but like I'm not asking anybody anything. Nobody's telling me anything. I'm just birthing. And I remember Brooke was behind me and she said, reached out and feel your baby's head. But she said it so quietly that Zach couldn't hear her say that. And so when she said that, I said, "Zach, where's Charlie?" And he said, "Do I need to get Charlie?" I said, "Yeah, go get Charlie." He was like, after when we talked about it, he's like, "I had no clue that we were about to push a baby out."
Yes.
He's like, "I really thought we were at 2 hours still." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So she Brooke instructed me, she's like, "Maybe you want to put your one leg into runner's lunge position, just give her a little bit more room." Because it took me 3 contractions to like that ring of fire was 3 contractions long.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, like, why is this taking so long? Like, why is this part taking so long? I was expecting to have 1 contraction of ring of fire and then like one
Her
contraction with
head
her
come
head,
out.
1 contraction with her body. Like, let's just do this. Let's get her out. So she stretched me for a really long time. And turns out that was probably a blessing because I didn't tear at all. But so I did runner's lunge and then her head ended up coming out. And Brooke is very much a mama led midwife. And so she's always going to ask me, like, she didn't even want to intervene at all. And she said so quick and so firm, "Get out of the water," that I knew I needed to get out of the water. And so I have a baby hanging out of me, and I'm not a tall human. And I jump over the side of this wall of this
While her head is
birth
hanging out of
pool
you.
while her head is hanging out of me. And the next thing you know, I have Brooke's whole arm up inside of me. So she was perpendicular. So she has shoulder dystocia. And Brooke knew, like, from so, and I didn't know this then. I ended up asking her in one of my postpartum, like, how did you know and when did you know that like something was not right? And she said that when a baby's head comes out, it could come out like any sort of way, right? In any direction, but it's almost always going to square up to the shoulders. And she said, I thought about it in my head when it was taking so long for her head to come out. And then when her head squared up in the opposite way that I wanted it to, I knew she was sideways. And so she shoved her whole arm up in there and moved her and pulled her out of me like a baby calf. And that was excruciating.
Yeah, I bet.
Excruciating. Oh my word. But then she was out and she was here and it was, I mean, I remember sitting there just like in oxytocin land and it was amazing. And I've never been so in awe of my body ever. And she was big. So she was 9 pounds, 8 ounces. Yeah, I felt every bit of that 9 pound, 8 ounce sideways baby come out.
And did Charlie get to see?
So at that point, so Charlie was there, but she was like sleepy. She was in daddy's arms. And I remember saying, what time is it? And they said 11:17. And I was like, baby, you got your heart's desire. She was born on your birthday. And she was so happy, but she was so sleepy, so it's sweet. It was precious that like God gave me my heart's desire to celebrate her in the morning. And then Charlie got her birthday baby sister.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a sweet gift from the Lord.
Yes. So I would say that like our birth was very, very, very redemptive this time. I mean, it was so full of worship. It was so full. My doula this time was like, I felt really pointless at some points. Like I felt like I was sitting there thinking to myself, I could be in a Christian home birth movie right now. Like every bit of, I mean, from Charlie reading scripture to me, to my best friend massaging my back, to us singing worship. She's like, it was the most beautiful thing. I just felt like I didn't need to be there. So she just took pictures, which I didn't hire a birth photographer. And I have the most gorgeous photos of this birth this time because my doula was like, I know I can do this. Like, I don't think she needs me for much else, but she was so sweet. They asked me if I wanted to like get comfy for try to start nursing, placenta, all that stuff. And like, that was my major trauma was placenta. Like I would say from the first go around, like my biggest birth trauma is that whole placenta hemorrhage situation.
Right.
I blamed my doctor for that. So I get back and I'm like leaning back. She started nursing right away and we're kind of just chatting and I keep feeling like little gushes of blood and probably 30, 45 minutes go by and my midwife was like, are you feeling anything? Like any contractions? Are you feeling crampy at all? Like placenta wise? And I'm like, nothing. And she's like, all right. But I kept kind of having little gushes of blood. And she's like, okay, well, I want you to push anyway. Like, let's see where it is. And nothing came but another gush of blood. And so a little time goes by and she's like, Nick, I'm gonna have to give you some Pitocin. And I'm like, okay, do whatever. Like at this point, I'm like, whatever, I got my baby, do whatever you need to do. And so she gives me pit in this leg, bleed, 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 gives me pit in this leg, gives me pit in this leg. I ended up getting methergine. So this is like after midnight. Oh, they tried Cytotec up my rear end first. Before that, she's like, I'm really sorry. I didn't want to have to go in this hole today too, but I'm like, I don't care, whatever. Like, and nothing's really stopping my bleeding and we can't get this placenta out. And so she's like, I know you don't want me to do this, but I'm going to have to tug this thing. And I was like, okay, let's just do it. So it comes out and she's like,
it's not whole.
Yeah. And so she's like, it's a really odd shape. And so that can mean one of two things. Like, and my doula said later that it looked like it was really thick on this side. And then this side, it looked like it was kind of sheared off. And so I remember my best friend asking, how do we know that it's all there? And Brooke said, we don't, but we have to stop her bleeding. And so at this point, she tried to start an IV of Pitocin, and she could get in my vein 3 different times, and 3 different times my veins collapsed. And she's like, Nikki, and I could tell at this point, like, she's so just chill. And at this point, like, I can tell she's frazzled. And she's like, we are going to have to go. I am so sorry, but we are going to have to go. And so Zach's getting Highland dressed, and I know that that's his worst fear, like that we're about to transfer to the hospital again.
Mhm.
And we were initially going to go in the car because of the ability to get there quicker or whatever. And I was just like, the whole time, Kayla, I was like, it's fine. We're fine. Everything is fine. I, not for a second, felt fear. I had the peace of the Lord. I mean, it is like Psalms 91, like, under his wings, you'll find refuge. Like, I truly felt that the entire time. And I was like, baby, we've done this before. It's good. It's fine. And so then I have another big gush, and Brooke says, Zach, call 911. And I went from being very like with it, happy, whatever, to my best friend looked at me and she's like, Nick, you good? I said, I'm just really tired. And at that point, I'm thinking I'm really tired because it's the middle of the night and I've been birthing all day.
Right.
Turns out I had lost a lot of blood at that point. And so medics get to my house, and actually the supervisor gets there first. Sweet gentleman. All these medics come in, and I just said, who in here's a believer? And that the supervisor said, I am. And I said, okay, I'm going to need a pretty bold prayer. And Kayla, when I tell you this man rained heaven down for me, I mean, he prayed like he was petitioning the throne of God for me. It was beautiful. And then they put me in the ambulance, and Brooke was with me. So midwife this time going with me. And she's like, I don't care. I'm not leaving your side. Like, I can get in trouble. It doesn't matter. But she had tension. She had compression on my uterus to keep, like, try to stop it from bleeding all this time. And now they want her to buckle up in the ambulance. And so she can't have that on me anymore. And so she was stressing about that. And I remember, I don't know if you've ever passed out before, but I remember feeling like I was going to pass out. And I remember having a feeling, whether it was the Holy Spirit, I'm sure it was the Holy Spirit, but it was, you cannot fall asleep right now. And so I just started asking questions. I was like, Brooke, tell me what's going to happen when we get to the hospital, yada, yada. And so she's answering my questions. And then I started worshiping. I started singing worship songs to keep myself awake. And I remember thinking, this is taking forever to get to the hospital. Zach and Highland and my doula, Zach and Highland and my doula were in the car behind us. They started in the car behind us. They ended up beating us to the hospital because when the ambulance would like accelerate like faster, my vitals would dip. And so Brooke said she thinks that they had to like drive at a moderate pace to just like keep me stable. But we got there, and like, it was wild. I was just singing. I mean, I was singing nothing but the blood of Jesus as I was being strolled down the halls of this hospital. And it probably looked ridiculous to some people. But we got to the labor and delivery unit, and the midwife met us there. And she was not happy that Brooke didn't do an internal sweep. Brooke asked me if she's like, this is my last thing I can do. And I said, if we're going to the hospital anyway, are they going to do that there? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, let's just do it there. Like, I feel like I'm going to bleed more if we try to do this at home. And so they fussed at her for not doing that. And she's like, I asked her. She said no, like, but that's all they really fussed at her for. And it was really bold for her to show up there with me because she could have gotten in a lot of trouble. They could have called
So
and
she was a CPM then?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they took me back they did a sweep. I had a 2.5 pound blood clot in there.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. And yeah, we had another DNC. So I had 3. I went from having no surgeries to like 3 in 4
So
years.
was there more of your placenta in there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my body does something funky and holds placentas. Like, I don't know. It's the most odd thing.
Well, the first time, I think it was your doctor pulling it out way before it was ready. The second time, not like your second DNC, but for your second labor, to me, it sounds like maybe there was what they said scar tissue from it happening the first time. And it's possible that your placenta adhered to said scar tissue and was more like placenta accreta and then was basically stuck in there.
Yeah, that's all. And when I was being seen by midwives in the hospital, the one midwife did say that to me. Basically, like like we like to see a really smooth terrain, and placentas can be retained when there's a bumpy terrain or scar tissue or something like that. So because that was my big thing is like, how do we know that like all of the placenta is gone? Because that was my trauma point. And she was like, we just have to do an ultrasound after, and that even doesn't always show you everything. But so yeah, I had another DNC. They got the rest of that out, and then I ended up needing 2 blood transfusions because I ended up losing between 3,000 and 3,500 ml of blood.
Whoa,
So
that's like way more than you should.
really scary. Yeah, like I was in a way more dangerous spot this time around than I was last
And you
time.
never passed out?
No, I'm
Wow.
telling you. And when I tell you there was not an iota of fear in me, that was just God's. I mean, it's really interesting when I tell Highland's story, I have zero trauma. Zero. Like I mean, I went through it with her afterward, but it was like God just held me in all of it, that it doesn't feel like I saw all of God in his majesty in my birth, and I saw all of his protection and comfort and covering in my hemorrhage. And they were like two different experiences almost, that he just showed his glory and his majesty, and they both just are a testimony. Like none of it is trauma to me, you know?
Yeah, that's the Holy Spirit and supernatural peace. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Mm.
So this time around we were in the hospital for 2 days so that they could do the transfusions. And then we came home and I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck. Golly, I did. But this postpartum has been so sweet. Part of that is knowing what I didn't know the first time, right? Like I didn't get hit with a IGT diagnosis. Like I knew to have a freezer full of milk ahead of time. I also knew I was never going to pump 8 times a day again. Like that wasn't good for my mental space. I didn't really want to pump at all, to be honest with you. Um, I have like it's just wild what second baby will give you, and hindsight and all of that. But there has been so much peace in my home this time around, and I have moments where I was just talking to my husband last night, like, oh man, I remember the first 2 weeks when we like watched the Survival Alaska show, and she was just like nuzzled up. I mean, like, I don't have memories like that for Charlie, which makes me sad. But we were, fighting for our lives to stay above water with her, I feel like. And this time has just been such a gift. It's been really sweet. So she'll be 4 months at the end of the month, and it feels like it flew, but it just all has been great.
Mm. I love that. I love that for you. Just like the complete different but better experience other than the hemorrhage, but sounds like that was still peaceful for you somehow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So as we wrap up then, is there anything else you want to share, whether it's what the Lord taught you through this process or advice you have for other parents out there?
Yeah, like surrender completely. Like that's your whole podcast, but like it's really hard to surrender through things that you're learning how to the first time, right? Like it was much easier for me second time around to surrender to certain things, nursing and etc. But like I think it goes back to even like submission to my husband, and knowing that like my husband is walking with the Lord, and that if he's not where I want to be, I still need to submit to that and trust that God is gonna redeem this wherever he's gonna redeem it. Like don't be so hung up on I think Charlie's whole birth and birth trauma, all that kind of stuff kind of really taught me that the whole crunchy natural lifestyle, there can be idols there. And it can feel like if I'm not doing it this way that I think is the quote unquote right way, I'm failing. And sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. Like sometimes you have to have Western medicine. Sometimes you have to have interventions. Sometimes you have to have other moms feed your baby. Like it just has to happen that way. And you can
Yeah.
feel like a failure, or you can recognize what God is trying to teach you through these different things. And so I think like submission to your husband in all things is going to be very wise. And almost every single time that I feel like, God, are we going to get him there? He does. Like, I just have to talk to God about it, and God will get my husband on the same page at some point. It might be in the third trimester, but we got there. um, but then just like being willing to say, all right, Lord, I trust you in all of it. And just really leaning on him and just trusting his covering, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for sharing your stories and everything. It's been, I've had a great time listening and learning too, about a couple of different things, which is always good because in this world being the birth world, it seems to me like no matter how long you've been in it, there are still things that come up that you've never heard of before, that you've never truly like known someone who's gone through that before. So I appreciate you being so transparent and being willing to share.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.